I'm Mike, and welcome to The Ultimate here on the ECS Network. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is The Ultimate? Well, in a nutshell, The Ultimate is a discussion between a bunch of fans, geeks, nerds of something, people who like to fan out and have discussions and just sit down and debate aspects of their fandom, no matter what that fandom is. Now, this is a limited series here on the ECS Network. It's not an ongoing deal, but for the next 6 weeks, starting today, it's going to replace Denzicaster in our weekly lineup. This limited series, we will tackle one particular discussion, kind of like a Final Four for geeks. Now, if you keep up with us on Periscope at ECS Podcasts or on Twitter, then you will have seen me discussing what the Ultimate is and the basic concept. But to give you guys sort of the broad stroke, and then I'll talk about it a little more in depth as this is episode 0 of the Ultimate, sort of a preview and a way to meet our cast of characters. The Ultimate is based off a very simple concept. We, as fans of whatever fandom we choose, naturally talk about what we think is the best. If you're a fan of baseball, you have debates over what was the greatest starting lineup, or who was the best pitcher, who had the greatest fastball. If you are a fan of superhero shows, who was the best actor to play this role, or who was the most powerful hero in the Marvel Universe, or what have you. People who love movies will debate which film had the finest direction, the best costume design, the best score. This is all very natural for fans to sit down and have these debates, to have these discussions. And so, inspired by a particular podcast I listened to a little while ago, we've decided to do just that, to periodically have our little debates, to determine the ultimate at something. And here, on the very first series of The Ultimate, it's going to be myself, along with 3 of my colleagues from my days in the world of professional wrestling. The former 3-time NWA Anarchy Heavyweight Champion and Alternative Pro Wrestling Hall of Famer Shadow Jackson. The former multi-time heavyweight champion throughout independence in the state of Georgia and beyond, Merciless Don Matthews. And someone that we actually have seen here on the ECS Network before, the disorderly Philip Payne, the former Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion, or if you watched our live stream from Rage Quit Radio or any of the episodes of RQR Plays that came out of it, Marty Phillips. We're going to sit down and pinpoint one era in wrestling history, specifically from 1981 to 2001, from the time that the NWA World Heavyweight Championship became more or less controlled by Jim Crockett Promotions with the first reign of the Nature Boy Ric Flair, all the way through the final WCW World Title match, the night Chris Jericho unified the WCW and WWF World titles at Vengeance 2001. We're going to figure out who is the ultimate World's Heavyweight Champion. Now, one thing about such a debate and the way we're doing this. Now, in our particular case, as we're sitting down and we're going to determine who was the ultimate holder of wrestling's richest prize, at least for that 20-year gap, we are going to set this up in a tournament format. So, it's a 32-man tournament. Each individual matchup is considered in a vacuum. It's not the blow-off, it's not the beginning of a program, it's its own isolated event. We'll discuss the pros and cons, each from our own points of view, of the competitors while they were world champion. And it's up to each individual host, or panelist in this case, to decide what time as champion was the most iconic. Take Sting, for instance. Sting was the WCW World Champion as Surfer Sting with the blonde buzz cut and the multicolored attire and face paint, but he was also WCW World Champion as the Crow Sting with the monochrome black and white, the trench coat, and a baseball bat. It's up to you to figure out what you think the iconic version of Sting would be, and that's part of the discussion. Each one of us brings our own point of view to the table, and each one of us has our own school of thought in picking a winner. Majority rules, and if we can't decide between us who would move on, well, we have two special tiebreakers to help us out with that. Referee Ken Wallace, who's well known in the state of Georgia on the independent wrestling scene, and beloved former NWA Wildside announcer, later hated and despised NWA Anarchy manager, but incredibly respected mind and booker in the wrestling business, the Reverend Dan Wilson, will be giving us their insights as well. They filled out brackets and sent them in to us by Facebook, so they are serving as our tiebreaker votes in the event that we can't decide amongst us. It's going to be a pretty interesting discussion all the way around. Now, we've already taped some of the episodes, and what you're about to see is sort of a sneak preview. And I say that because we taped this during episode 1, but it really didn't fit in while we were doing editing on the episode. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, and it made the episode a little long. But it was a very interesting discussion. You see, I've been a booker in professional wrestling myself, and so I have my own insight on what one of these means, a championship belt. Granted, this is a replica of the real thing, not the actual factual, but still, to be a champion in the sport of professional wrestling, I have my own insight on what I think that means. Whether or not it's just a prop, or whether it holds some more significance in the wrestling business. So does Merciless Don Matthews, who has been a multi-time heavyweight champion in numerous independent promotions across Georgia and South Carolina. As does Philip Payne, who has held likewise, been a multiple-time champion. Hello, Duncan. As does Shadow Jackson, the 3-time former Anarchy heavyweight and 5-time former Anarchy tag team champion. So, we posed that question to each of them during that panel. What does it mean to be the champion? What significance does it hold? What does it feel like when they tell you you're going to become the champion tonight? Whether it's the heavyweight champion, whether it is some geographical area like the southern states or the mid-Atlantic, or whether it's that company's version of a world title. It's a simple question. Each of these men have felt that feeling at some point in time. So they're going to give us their insight. Is something like this just a prop? Or does it actually mean something? Well, let's let them give us their answers and you'll get a little insight, because that's perhaps one of the reasons that we took to this conversation so passionately over the course of 5 weeks. Who would be the ultimate heavyweight champion of the world from 1981 to 2001 in the NWA and WCW? There's only one way to find out. Now, before anyone asks, because next week there will be questions raised, we selected the 32 individuals that would take part in this tournament based off of their longest combined reign as champion, and then they were seeded. As a result, some names that you might think should belong on the list, and frankly I do too, are missing. And there are some names that probably don't deserve to be on the list that are there. They won't last long, I promise. But that was the metric we set for ourselves before we sat down and decided how we were going to determine. It seemed like the most fair way to decide who would be the 32 men in this tournament. And guess we live or die by it. So with all that said, and knowing that, at least for episodes 1 and 2, there will be at least 2 questionable matchups in the opening rounds of our tournament, I'm Mike. We'll see you next time here on The Ultimate, and take a look at this special discussion about what it means to be the man. I've got to ask you real quick if, because I've got 3 guys here who have all been professional wrestlers and on the independent circuit have all done very well for themselves. Every one of them has held a heavyweight title. And I want to touch on this briefly because this is something that I think is interesting, to me anyway. So everybody we're talking about, even David Arquette, has been recognized as the heavyweight champion of the world. Don, you've been a heavyweight champion more than once in various companies. So have you, Marty, so is Shadow Jackson. Explain to people out there, because there are a lot of people who feel the heavyweight title or any championship belt is a prop. For you, Shadow, when you were the man, you were the champ, what did that mean to you? I mean, none of y'all have ever been a major world champion, but when a promotion looks at you and goes, you're the guy, we're putting the belt on you, what does that mean to you?
It means that you have a locker room to be accountable to. It means that for this point in time, however short, however long, you're the guy in that locker room that has to bring everybody else up another notch or another level. Even if you're not wrestling that guy, how you defend that belt and how much intensity you bring to your defenses trickles down on the rest of the card. If you walk out there nonchalant, throw the belt down, I'm going to get you if you wrestle me tomorrow, yeah, the whole show goes down because it starts at the top. You have to look at that belt as a prop. When you win it, it's real. When you have it, it's real. When you go home, when you put it on the dresser, you don't put clothes on top of it. Next Saturday, I'm going to take it back. No, you look at it. You carry it around with you because it's a thing of pride. No matter how big the company, no matter how small the company, when you hold that belt, the pride you show while you're holding it lets everybody know if your company's worth 2 cents or not. If you ain't holding that belt worth 2 cents, the people paying money gonna look and say, if he don't care. So I always look at it as that's the most important thing, is how you perceive yourself and influence it out on other people is how they see the belt and how they see the company.
I always said to people, and I've said this to young kids in the business who ask me today when I go to shows on occasion, the title is nothing more than a prop. I've heard that from a couple of bookers that I've been around here as of late, and wanted to have words with them both over it. I always said the belt is the one thing that transcends work and becomes reality. The work is, if you are the Mid-Atlantic champion, the South Carolina champion, the Georgia champ, whatever, you are the best wrestler in that given area. But the reality is that the promoters, the bookers, look at you and go, you're the guy that can draw a house. You're the guy we're willing to bet the bank on for ever how long a period of time. So it shows that the company has the trust in you to be its flagship, to be its face. But at the same time, there's the work part of it, that you're the baddest man in the room. You're not always the baddest man in the room, but you are probably one of the most talented, most charismatic, and you're one of the most bankable guys as far as that company is concerned at that time. I know, Marty, you were champion for a couple of different companies. I know the emotion when you won the belt you literally brought with you, which we'll get on camera next episode, the Mid-Atlantic title for MAXW, which was a promotion we talk about periodically on the Announcers Booth podcast. What did it mean to you the night you won your first heavyweight title?
The night I won my first heavyweight title, I fought this man right here. And it was a long, grueling match.
45 minutes and half the locker room fell asleep because y'all didn't tell them how long y'all were going.
True story.
We didn't know that. How long we were going.
It's one of those, it verifies it. You have reached the top of the mountain. You climbed to the top of the mountain. And you are able to compete at a level that very few get to. It validates all you try to do, all you want to do in the business.
Mm-hmm.
The people, like you said, the bookers, the company trusts you enough to give you the belt. They believe in your abilities for that time.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, it was a dream come true. I remember watching wrestling with my dad, and that influenced me a lot. And to be able to hold the belt up and say, yes, I am the champion, means a lot. Well, and to piggyback on that, I took the belt to work one day, and a guy walked by and said, "That's a nice belt. Did you win that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I won it in the match." He goes, He reached out and shook my hand and said, "It's the first time I've ever met a champion." And it blew my mind. It just, the outside world seeing it opens your eyes to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep that in my head. And I keep the belt on pedestal in my room, proudly displayed.
Before it goes any further, I have to say this, and I say it so it's on camera for posterity. One of the first things when I was able to get into the circuit, I knew this man over here, Don Matthews, IWA Heavyweight Champion, multiple times. At the beginning, I was the victim of hearing about a man I did not know and just assuming that he was champ for other reasons. But I will tell him to his face right now, after meeting you, wrestling you, and being in different companies with you, you earned each and every one of those titles, and you were a champion that elevated the rest of wherever you were at.
Thank you.
I never had a chance to tell you, and I'm not just blowing smoke now, but while we're talking about somebody that elevated IWA for what it was, you took everybody else and brought up to your level. And that's a tough thing to do when you're dealing with some of the backstage stuff you dealt with. So you're one of the reasons I say that whoever the champion is brings everybody else up.
I appreciate that. I won my first IWA title, which they're all prestigious. When a company looks at you and says, you know, you're the guy. But I was a rookie, and I'd already won every belt in the company. I won the tag belts very quick with a guy that I was teaming with named Hambone. What's up, Jason? And that didn't. Jake Gemini.
Jake
remember
Gemini.
him?
Oh, okay. One-eyed Jake.
Yeah, I gave him that name too. So, funny shoot thing is he had a glass eye.
He was a shooter too.
And
You're
I,
right.
hit him, and I hit him in the back of the head with a chair one day. But
I got a funny story about Jake Gemini too, but I ain't gonna bury him on the internet.
I'm not married. I dug him. We
He's a
had
good
some
guy.
really good matches. Even in Cowboys Company, he was my first match. My first real match. It was me and Hambone and Cowboys Company up in Lawrence. But I beat Steve Stampede, who was one of Johnny's guys. And
I was in the crowd for that match.
The thing that a lot of people didn't realize was I started wrestling when I was in the Marines. I did jiu-jitsu and I did judo and hapkido and things like that while I was in high school. And when I went to the military, I went into I started messing around with a group called the WWO with like Natron Steel and Lodi and places like that and people like that were in the Forest City, North Carolina. Not Forest City, but the New Bern and Havelock and Morehead City, North Carolina region is coastal. And I took my first couple of bumps there. They asked me what it was about, and I took a couple of judo throws or whatever, and they got my feet wet. Well, when I came home afterwards, I met Johnny Love because I was picking up parts at my job and saw his office. He said, "Yeah, you'd be good, kid. Why don't you come and try out? Come over to my house." God, I miss that man. I miss you, Johnny Love.
You'll be good, kid.
You'll
Why don't
be
you
good.
come over
Why
here?
don't
Did he
you
have the
come over
styrofoam? Did he have the styrofoam back then?
Yes. In his office with all of his pictures. And it was him. It was funny. It was him and the Bruise Brothers right there. But I got in his backyard, and he had a ring set up in his backyard, and it was soaking wet. And he wasn't even awake yet, and I was already in there at 8 o'clock in the morning just bumping. And he walks out, and I'm on the top rope, and I swanton bombed. He was like, "Well, that's it, kid. We're gonna put you in a show." And he started putting me in shows, and then Randy Mulkey showed up and trained me. Nature Boy Buddy Landale showed up and trained me with Scotty Ace and all them. But when I won that belt from Steve Stampede, and I came into the locker room, I felt like Flair did. His first title. I felt like I earned it, but nobody wanted me to have it. And you know, going through IWA and everything, and when I worked Shadow for the title a couple times there, it was great. But I'm gonna tell you the truth: the first title that really gave me goosebumps was in Bowman. I think because I felt like I was wrestling, but nobody really appreciated what I could do or what I could bring to the product, and then Rick Michaels walks in the door. For those of you who don't know, Rick Michaels is a guy who trained AJ Styles, you know, and this guy's got a ridiculous mind for the business, and he goes, kid, we're gonna do Freedom Fight in 6 months. It's gonna be me and you in the main event. I said, cool, that's great. And he put me over, and
they brought me in to ring announce that one match.
We sure did. We brought Greg in to ring announce that match because the ring announcer we had at the time was garbage, and I didn't want him to.
Yeah.
And I didn't want him to. I wanted, me and Rick both wanted Greg to give us that big fight feel, and I think the second I knew that I had a locker room behind me and a locker room that wanted me there, and a locker room that appreciated me there was at APW. No shine on IWA or SCE or anything like that, because I had Shadow said I had a bad reputation, but my reputation was given to me by bookers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, there are guys in the church right now that don't have bad reputations that are doing the same job that I did in IWA.
Your reputation was such that your reputation changed with me thanks to James Boulevard, because he had me agent a spot with you and Shadow in it was in Livonia, Georgia, and it was supposed to be a big pull apart spot, and I realized who I was dealing with when I came out as part of the pull apart, and Shadow's being held back by half the locker room in the corner and is struggling, and Don is being held down to the canvas by me and 2 referees. And I remember looking at Don at that point going, please, Don, it's me and 2 refs, fight to your feet. And he gets up. And I found out later from what I had been told, it was that because I was one of the bookers for Max at the time, it was you were so nervous that I was agenting the spot. And
I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something different. I was so tired of being, you know, who I was. But get back to the story. Not to cut you off, guys. But
I went for it. I knew it was coming.
but
I had to get close enough for a knee.
I always thought I was better as a heel than a baby. But everybody wanted to book me baby. So when I won the APW title, and it was the old, what was it, the old Georgia heavyweight title?
no, it's the old US belt.
So Rick puts that on me that night, and every babyface comes out. That man was part of it. He comes out, and everybody's patting my back, and I remember the promo that I cut without a microphone. I looked at the crowd, and I said, I bleed, because I was bleeding. I said, I bleed for you, and I'll bleed for this. I said, any man who wants any of this can expect, and I stopped talking. And the entire crowd said, no mercy.
Yep.
And that's when I felt like I was finally over.
To give you an idea, that picture of you bloody with it was the APW title, but it's it was the NWA US title belt was what they used for it. The picture of you with that belt bloody in the cage is still in the APW locker room.